I think there's a lot of some husbands, but a lot of wives probably that would put this into a very
high priority.
No, not high priority.
Oh.
Like this is a low priority category.
Oh,
like I know he wants that, but there's so much other things that are more important.
Gotcha.
But especially when there's something that is adding the distance, either it's physical distance or pregnancy, which is
so you're saying it's already hard, and now there's this thing that's making it
even harder. The war against us from an enemy, if he can attack our physical connection, biblically, when the Bible calls a husband and wife one, the way they become one is by physical intimacy, not by saying they're married, not by being betrothed, not by going through the ceremony, but the act of sex is what makes them one, which is very interesting. It's a very spiritual thing.
I love how the Bible uses the word known.
It means that he knew
intimate.
his wife. And so the act of oneness begins at the consummation of marriage, the coming together of a man and a woman. And so physical intimacy needs to be looked at in a perspective of this is got to be a high priority for us in our marriage. Again, I'm biased, but I'm saying biblically, perspective-wise, spiritually perspective-wise, we cannot take the physical intimacy of a husband and a wife for granted. We cannot put aside. So that doesn't mean it has to look the same in every season of life, but maintaining that closeness, that physical touch, it may not be able to be intercourse, but it can be other things. Mainly, you can have a conscious effort to stay physically close. Because like there's times when you're in bed and you are so uncomfortable, and I roll over to snuggle you, and you're like, I don't want to be touched right now. So it may not be.
By the way, I do appreciate your initiation there.
Thank you.
I just can't.
And I also understand that you're hot, uncomfortable. Like I get that, but even just that activity of coming closer, like if it's not my whole body, it could be an arm, a hand holding you, your hand, putting my hand on your hair, playing with your hair.
I was going to say, even like when we're watching a movie, like me putting my head on your shoulder.
Yes.
Or scooting closer to.
You tickle rubbing my arm. You've done it several times, like just rubbing my neck. Like those physical things remind each other that you're physically there.
I actually put a note here that I think it was at church. I stood next to you, and you were in a conversation with someone, but I just kind of was like, playing with your back, and
I loved it.
I know.
Did I lean over and tell you? I was like, I love this.
You turned around, and then I realized in that moment, it's been a while since I've engaged, and I've been the one to initiate that physical contact, and so I need to remind myself to do that more often.
Do you? This is probably a question, kind of just to get at wives, because I know I've known husbands that also struggle with physical intimacy, which is strange to me because it's so opposite of my flesh.
Yeah.
But I know in both husbands and wives, there's an issue sometimes with physical intimacy, fear of it, anxieties about it, lots of things. Yeah. Do you feel like there's a conscious fear sometimes of if you were to touch me, like in any sort of intimate way, that it might make me want you in a more physical way?
I wouldn't call it a fear as in I'm afraid, but fear as in like I know what I'm getting into. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm not going to do it because I don't want to open that.
I think that's come up before, yes.
And I know that people probably feel that way, but like you said, you did it while we were at church.
Yeah.
And you would and I felt so
loved.
And of course it turned me on, but in that moment, nothing's going to happen other than I was like, wow, she loves me. She wants to be near me and touch me and make me feel good.
What I'm hearing is if you do struggle with, oh no, this is going to lead to something more and you're not ready for that, do it in a public space.
Do it publicly.
Do it in a safe spot. No.
What I'm saying is not being afraid of what it means, because it does mean that, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. And like we said before, communication is the key. So if your touch does lead to something more and you're not ready for it, just be willing to communicate that and say, what can we do?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's just the Romans 12:10 verse, love one another with a brotherly affection. I know that sounds weird because brothers, but what it means is a familial affection.
I like that second part. It says, outdo one another in showing honor.
Yeah.
And I know honor is not the same thing as love or physical affection, but when we think about that concept of outdoing each other, it kind of helps with the challenge of initiation. If any of you struggle with initiation, because I know I have in times, to outdo each other with that kindness towards physical intimacy.
I'll say this. I felt really, when you were rubbing my neck at church, I felt really honored. Aww. And there's something to be said about other wives or other husbands watching that and saying, I wish my wife would do that. I want my wife to do that to me. And like feeling that honor for me or feeling that honor for themselves.
I was going to say expressing your love physically for one another. I know I'm not good about that. I usually do tend to push you away because it makes me uncomfortable a little bit. But it's good for other people, especially our kids, to see that affection and that closeness, that bonding.
Yeah, and it's hard to fake it.
Yeah, that's true.
It really is. It's hard to fake it.
That's true.
But so when I'm talking about maintaining closeness, hand holding, like coming up and just grabbing your wife's hand or your wife taking that effort to be like, I'm going to remind my husband that I'm still with him physically. Hugging, embracing throughout the day. All these small gestures, they maintain that physical connection. None of these are sexual intercourse, but they're all sexually intimate in a physical way.
Same with like massages.
Yeah.
Just being willing to touch each other.
And that's been actually a way that we've connected during this pregnancy is I just want to touch you and you're like, and I give you a foot massage or a back massage.
Well, what I love about that is you give me a foot massage you've offered and then we sit and chat while you're doing it. And it makes me feel close. So we both win.
Yep. And so the tickle rubs and the massages, all of those physical acts, we really don't have an excuse for not doing those.
Yeah.
Other than I'm just irritable and I'm going to live in that irritability and I'm not going to do it. Now the sexual intimacy, which is the next part, may not feel up to it. Maybe on pelvic rest and maybe you're physically not allowed to. Yeah. There could be lots of reasons for this, but even if the physical act of intercourse is off the table for a season, there are other things, and we don't have to describe them, and usually on this show we don't do that. But you know what they are, and you know the ways, we know the ways in which we can still be sexually intimate with each other when that time comes, when it's necessary. And again, by communication, like, hey, I really need you. Yeah.
There was something I wanted to mention, which I had the same thought. We're not going to go into super detail on anything, but especially being pregnant or like there's an injury or something like that, I know positioning really matters. And so being gracious with each other and flexible, like mentally and emotionally, for trying things, and if they don't work, and adjusting, being patient, going slower, all of these things make for a lighter atmosphere. I even thought of a funny one, which I almost didn't want to share, but like I had really bad indigestion this season.
You did, more than any other baby.
Yeah. And so for me, like that was a hang up because I don't feel like that would be very nice going into trying to be physical with you and, having
you have a hard time just laying on your back.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make note of that, that when our body is experiencing some hard things, that the other spouse has a way of making the atmosphere lighter by not pointing it out or making them feel bad or huffing or puffing, just go with the flow. Both of them, both people, go with the flow.
And I also want to, that was really good. Yeah. Because positioning like physically, like you might have to adjust. And the other thing I was thinking is in these seasons, there's times when you feel better. Yeah. And times when you feel worse.
So take advantage.
Seriously.
I wasn't great about that.
This is what I was going to get at is be very conscious of like, I feel good today. Yeah. Like this is a good day. Take advantage of the good day. Yeah. So that when the bad days come, it's not just a compiled like, well, could have happened yesterday, but didn't. And definitely can't happen today. And so making sure you're very conscious.
And being willing to initiate in those times.
And
I could have done better.
Taking advantage of when you feel